Hey everyone, and welcome back to Nostalgia Tuesdays. That will probably be the most normal sounding intro you'll hear from me, and believe me, it does not roll off the tongue. That felt disgusting, but this little series is not going to be an every week sort of thing. Think of it like your favorite program that suddenly gets cancelled and you don't know why. You're distraught, you're going on forums and fan pages to see what everyone else is thinking. You try to start a petition to get the show back on the air, and then eventually, on some Samurai Jack type of timing, it appears 13 years later, kind of like another famous show I'll be talking about today. Anywho, last week we spoke about two shows that defined my childhood, Spider-Man the Animated Series and The Batman 2004, and it was cool to see everyone chime in the comments. For many of us, these cartoons were a gateway to these special worlds that would stick with us for the rest of our lives, and obviously I know that it would lead to some internal biases we have towards these shows, but if there was one era where I could confidently tell you that most people do not have rose-tinted glasses for, it's the shows that came out in the mid-2000s to the early 2010s, because for a lot of us, we watched these shows maybe pretty recently, or we had the time to rewatch them. A lot of them were on Netflix or HBO and a lot of streaming services for a lot of the time, so as you might expect, a lot of us had the opportunity to watch them over and over again. Either way, for my money at least, it was an era representative of better days at both Marvel and DC. Not exactly in terms of quality, although that can be easily argued for in favor considering both are putting out quality shows and media in general, but in terms of feel, it felt modernized, yet it still kept that classic and inspirational vibe. Plus, they made sure to follow what I consider the perfect adaptation template. They respected the source material, of course, but obviously took some liberties reworking stories told in the comics to fit within the structure and greater narrative of the show, but they still kept the heart of what made those stories special. A lot of these creatives think that they're better than the source material and change things for the sake of doing that, for their way, the better way, instead of telling a story that they know only they could tell with reverence for what came before, but realizing it's their turn to put their stamp on the DC and Marvel universe and making changes with that mindset at the forefront. But before we get started, remember to like, subscribe, comment, all that cool stuff, and yeah, let's get to it. As I was alluding to at the beginning of the video, Young Justice is one of those special shows that I see a lot of people, or at least a vocal minority, are now starting to hate in retrospect because of its comic inaccuracy, which is stupid. But speaking of retro, I'm gonna put on that Young Justice game in the background. Do y'all remember this game? If you got it for the PS3 or Xbox, I am sorry to say, but you might be a bot because you bought a downgraded Ultimate Alliance that was meant to be a show tie-in for a current generation console. It should have been a Wii game. And I don't mean to say that the Wii U was just a trash compactor console for games that should have been released 5 years ago, but I will admit it might have been exclusively used almost for tie-in games and Wii exclusives. Transformers Prime, you will be missed. But despite the hate from purists or those who have been seemingly enlightened by reading the Young Justice books by Peter David, God rest his soul, a lot of these guys are forgetting what these more mainstream depictions of the DC universe can do for the company's general perception, and this show, among others, has led to the creation of many DC fans, and the goal was always to get people to understand that there is a whole world of cool content outside the movies, and it still barely scratched the surface. It got people to realize that these films just really weren't that good or an accurate representation of these characters at all. What's interesting about this show specifically though was how it was kind of a weird hybrid between the Young Justice and Teen Titans lineups. It's like two different generations of heroes just got mashed together toy box style, and the creators were then free to see where the story took them. If we look at Teen Titans Volume 3, which is being published at the same time as the show, and even the original Peter David stuff, we can see what they took inspiration from, as Artemis was definitely a stand-in for Arrowette, Miss Martian was just introduced in Teen Titans a couple of years prior, and Superboy was one of the 4 core members who founded the group in the comics. 3 actually, there's 3 core members, but in the show, they followed the Lex Luthor storyline from Teen Titans Volume 3. The major anomalies in the team, however, were Robin and Kid Flash, who are normally seen as the veterans of this teenage superhero gig and were effectively their superiors and mentors as highly respected members of the superhuman community as Nightwing and the Flash respectively. But in my eyes, they adapted these characters into becoming fan favorites if they weren't that already, so I think it works just fine. What does slightly bother me though was how in Season 2, we finally had all the core members of the original Young Justice team, yet they were all in their separate corners. Superboy's main interactions stayed with the Season 1 team. Tim, Cassie, and Bart all started to become major players, but Bart was wrapped around Blue Beetle the entire time, which I'll admit was a pretty cool dynamic as he came from the future, where Jaime went crazy and went back in time to keep an eye on him and prevent that from happening. Which left us with Tim and Cassie, who ends up in a relationship together, and I'm sorry to say this, but the little comic corner in my brain was always whispering to me how this was meant to be a doomed relationship, a possible mistake that occurs out of grief because Superboy, her canon boyfriend, dies in the Infinite Crisis event. I know this is just a me thing, but seeing how it could have shifted towards a more comic accurate team with maybe Connor as the supervisor or mentor, if you wanted to go that route, was always a missed opportunity to me, as it would have been a way to keep these new characters from feeling tacked on, especially in those newer seasons that we don't talk about. Despite this tiny grievance though, I feel like people are underestimating how the show uses its source material. It still pulls directly from the Young Justice run, using Mount Justice as their base, Red Tornado as the team's supervisor, bringing in the Super Cycle from Apocalypse, which opens the door to the New Gods, and even adapting Harm and Secret's very depressing storyline, which hits even harder if you know she becomes an important member in the comics. So as you can see here, it doesn't really ignore anything in particular, it just picks and chooses what it wants and what they want to make work. And when it does pull something, it usually lands. That Wally episode is a perfect example, taking that iconic Flash story, which was his first story as the main Flash, and turning it into a grounded, character-focused moment for Kid Flash. Remember when he was running across America trying to get that heart to a patient? That happened in the comics, and they brought that in for Wally's development here. Roy Harper might be the best adaptation in the show though. The clone storyline sounds messy on paper, but it actually simplifies his arc and makes it more personal. Him going from Speedy to Red Arrow, joining the League, then slowly unraveling while searching for the real Roy adds that edge to his character without overcomplicating it. They even allude to him being a drug addict or even having an alcohol addiction after we see him being very manic and depressed and losing himself in this journey, even taking some money and compensation for his hero work. We even see him have a kid with Cheshire through this entire development. And then we have the normal Roy who becomes Arsenal, and you really feel that shift. He's more aggressive, more unstable, and the team actually has to check him, which comes from his trauma, him losing his arm, and him being young. In the comics, he was on heroin the entire time, so this is a pretty good change of pace, and it's also, if you didn't realize, an adaptation of Cry for Justice, but done a lot better. He has the robotic Winter Soldier arm upgrade, but it's for a different set of reasons, and it allows us to have an Arsenal who's more okay with killing. And then Blue Beetle, he's the big one. Centering an entire season around him and the Reach made him a fan favorite almost by default. And Black Beetle, that show made him feel like an absolute monster. If you grew up on this, you thought he was one of the craziest villains in DC, no question, even though he barely exists even in this way in the comics. And the other thing that really got me was how they nailed making legacy villains feel dangerous. Clayface, Mongol, Despero, Parasite, all of them felt like real threats, every single one of them almost squad wiped on their own. And that was crazy to me, especially as a kid. The world was bigger than the team, and they weren't always ready for it, but that is what made it work. And now on the Marvel side of things, this is where things get kind of funny in hindsight, because Avengers Earth's Mightiest Heroes, I don't know why that's a tongue twister for me, was out here doing things what the MCU eventually became known for, just with way less time, way less budget, and honestly a lot more consistent. And I don't think people really clock that enough. Right from the jump, the structure tells you everything you need to know, those first 5 episodes being dedicated to individual Avengers, with the last one of course being dedicated to Ant-Man and the Wasp together. This was efficient. You get everyone's tone, their world, how they operate on their own, and then you naturally build up to a team with an Avengers level threat without Captain America. So when Cap finally shows up after being thought out, it actually feels like something is being completed. It's not rushed or forced, it feels earned. And even small decisions like saving Loki for the season finale instead of using him immediately like the comics just shows you a level of restraint that you don't always see. The show understood pacing, and it also understood characters that might have been overlooked. Hawkeye is a perfect example. In most adaptations, he's just kinda there. He's useful, but not somebody that you're locking in for, not somebody you look for every single episode. This show actually made him matter to the general public. It gave him a proper personality and attitude beyond being somebody who's there to fill a slot. And by the end of it, he's one of the most enjoyable characters to watch. And then, this is really personal to me being a Captain America fan, there is Zemo. This might be the best version of Zemo that we've gotten outside of comics. He's not just a name, he's a problem. The Masters of Evil genuinely feel like a coordinated unit that could wipe the Avengers if things go slightly wrong, and that's how it should be. Zemo isn't supposed to be a side villain. He's supposed to feel like the guy who forces the Avengers to pay attention and to go to their limits. The show in general just felt like the ideal Marvel universe. It had access to everyone, Fantastic Four, X-Men, and even though the X-Men were mostly kept to cameos, you could feel that larger world existing in the background. It didn't need to constantly remind you, it just was. Like when Wolverine randomly showed up during the Captain America origin episode with no big reveal, no dramatic pause, he was just there. That's how you handle a shared universe. Not some sort of big event where you have to point at your screen, just a part of the world and used organically. And it sucks even more knowing that Season 3 was supposed to expand on that. We were going to get more X-Men involvement, more crossover stories, and don't get me started on the Fantastic Four episode we missed. We were supposed to get an Impossible Man episode, bro. These are one of those things that keep you up at night. The show knew how to handle big storylines. The Kree invasion and characters like Captain Marvel were handled in a way that felt natural to the larger universe instead of just being dropped in there to boost its scale. Ultron was genuinely terrifying, and the Yellow Jacket storyline actually gave weight to Hank Pym's evolution instead of rushing it. Even characters like the Red Hulk were improved upon. The focus on Hulk and Thor themselves, along with their supporting characters like Beta Ray Bill, gave those corners of the universe way more depth that you'd expect from a team show, and it does it way better than the MCU. And I'm just gonna say it, they should have used this show as a template when adapting Kang the Conqueror. One thing I really want to highlight is when the show builds up a threat, it actually commits to it. It lets things breathe, it lets characters be affected, and you feel the weight of what's happening, which is why their version of Secret Invasion hits so hard. They didn't just do a surface level, who can you trust storyline, they actually committed to the bit. Huge spoiler warning, you have been warned, but when they replaced Captain America with a Skrull for a significant amount of time, it was a wild decision, especially for a show like this, and the fact that Skrull Cap was actively involved in major events before the reveal makes the invasion feel earned instead of sudden. When everything finally unfolds, it's not just a twist, it's a proper payoff, and that's really what separates this show from a bunch of other Marvel shows, because it doesn't just adapt ideas from the comics, they understood how to restructure them so they worked in a serialized format without losing what made them impactful in the first place. And looking back on it now, it's kinda crazy how much it got right. But yeah guys, what do you think? Let me know down below what shows, at least to you, superhero shows that you think are underrated. Maybe even leave in some of those adult shows that people haven't watched, or maybe they really haven't gotten around to them. There are a lot of things that are really under people's radar that needs to be brought to their attention. These two are very famous and important to a lot of our childhoods, but there are a lot of them that people just miss. But yeah, let me know down below. Remember to like, subscribe, and turn on post notifications so you know when a new video goes live. And yeah, see you all later. Take care. Deuces. Peace.